Look in this Chanon right before Sheni. And we say every day by Kriyas Torah, Atem Advikim Hashem Elokechem Chaim Kulchem Hayom. Moshe Rabbeinu says the Klal, so you are Dveikim Hashem Elokechem, when you cleave to Hashem Elokechem Chaim Kulchem Hayom. You live continuously every day. So if you take a look at the Balaturim, Atem Advikim, Tagin Al Kuf. The Tagim, there's a crown in the Sefer Torah on the letter Kuf of the word Dveikim. There's Tagim, Remes Kuf Brochos Shetzorach Levorach B'chol Yom. It's alluding that a Jew has to say 100 brachos every day. Atem Adveikim B'Shem Elokechem. If you want to be Dovik B'Shem Elokechem, if you say Kuf Brochos B'chol Yom, that's a manner in which you Dovik B'Hashem. The Gemara tells us in Brachos that Rava says that a bracha that does not have Shem or Malchus, you don't mention in the bracha Hashem, Yudke Vovke, and Malchus, Melech. Hashem is the king of the universe. It has no value. It's not a bracha. So when Chazal say, Moshe Rabbeinu says this week's parsha, Mo Hashem Elokecha Shom Me'imoch. What is Hashem asking of you? Al tikra ma elameo. What is Hashem asking of you? Meo. He wants you to say 100 brachos every day. What's the value of 100 brachos? Over here, it's being alluded. Atem adveikim b'Hashem Elokechem. The tag, the crown, is on the kuf to allude to the fact that how are you dovik? How do you create that level of consciousness to be dovik, to attach yourself to Hashem? Mei brachos b'chol yom. That if you say 100 times every day, Hashem Yudke Vovke, which is pronounced as Master, Infinite, Elokim, Elokeinu, Almighty, Melech Olam, King of the Universe. You say that 100 times a day, it creates a consciousness, an awareness, and that will cause you to be David Hashem Elokechem. That's the understanding of this Balaturim. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu was saying. And the crown on the Kuf alludes to this fact. We had mentioned in the past, the Rambam in Hilchos Brachos writes that there are many different kinds of brachos. You have birchas hanenin, you have a bracha that before you benefit from food, you say a bracha. You have birchas hamitzvos, that before you do a mitzvah, it's predicated on a bracha. Then you have birchas hanor v'shebach, brachos which, when you have pleasure, and you give praise to Hashem. And the only bracha, which is Doraisa, is Birchas HaMazon, as it says, V'chalta v'savotu v'rachta, when you eat and you say that you bless Hashem. However, everything else is Midivri Sofrim, so rabbinical. And why did they legislate all these brachos if the only bracha on the Torah level is Birchas HaMazon, which is the after bracha? Kedei lahakir boro tamid. Those are the words of the Rambam. To recognize your Creator continuously. Why did they legislate, promulgate these brachos, which is the vast majority of brachos? The value is kedei lahakir boro tamid, that you will always recognize your Creator continuously, that you should not have any lapses of cognizance and awareness of His existence. That is the value of brachos. So that's exactly what the Balaturim, the crown on the kuf of Dveikim, Atem Adveikim, Hashem Elokechem, the kuf is alluding to brachos, that if you want to be Dovik in Hashem, you have to have that awareness. How do you have that awareness? That's kuf brachos b'chol yom. That's how we've explained this in the past. Just stop for a moment. Of course, when you say the bracha, if you say the bracha by rote, where you say the words and your mind is elsewhere, and you're not focused on the bracha, of course, you're not going to be touched by what you're saying. So if your person says the bracha appropriately, and you have the kavanah, Yudke Vovke, Elokeinu, Almighty, Melech, King of the universe, then you're touched by it. If you say it literally without any level of distraction. The Mechaber rules by Shema Yisrael, if you say a bracha, even if you don't have that level of focus, you're yotzei. But Kriya Shema, you have to have a minimal level of kavanah. When you say Shema Yisrael Hashem, you have to think master of the universe. You have to think master. Master, you have to think Elokeinu Almighty. Hashem, again, master Echad. One. If you don't think, have that in mind, you're not Yotzei Kriya Shema. By other things, you say Hashem, Melech, whatever it is, even if you don't think, have that in mind, you fulfill your obligation of bracha. But in regard to Kriya Shema, which is Kabbalah L'Mal Shamayim, you're accepting his dominion, minimally you have to think Master, Almighty, Echad. That's minimum. And of course, there's much more that you can think about, but that's minimum. So we see, because what is accepting dominion of Hashem? Somebody once says for Rabbi Yoshiv, if a person says Modim and Achloch, in Shmones we say Modim, and a person's mind is elsewhere, should you repeat Modim? Not that it invalidates the Shmones. He says you should repeat it. Why? Because Modim is giving thanks. If a person is not cognizant that he's saying thank you, it doesn't have any meaning, it doesn't have any value. You're expressing your thankfulness to Hashem. So therefore, if you say it and your mind is elsewhere in the Shemona Esrei, you should go back and say it with kavanah for that reason. Because how do you say thank you without being in touch with thank you?
Rabbi.
1 second, Shay. We had mentioned in the past the whole concept of the number 100. 100. The first time we came upon 100 in the Torah was that when Yaakov returned after 36 years being away, and he's on his way back, and he comes to Canaan. The Torah tells us he purchases a piece of property from Mea Ksita for 100 Ksita. It may be a review for many of you, but there's going to be something added. Mea Ksita. So when I read it the first time, not the first time, when I read it at that time, the first time it bothered me. Why is it important for us to know what he paid for it? He purchased a piece of property. What is it? Torah tells us Mea Ksita. So over there, the Kli Yakar, who's the commentator, one of the commentators on the Chumash, explains that the height of the Heichel in the Beis Hamikdash that Shlomo built was 100 amos. Was Mea Amma. The Gova Heichel. Why is it 100 amos? So he explains that initially, we just had the Gemara in Avodah Zorah, Adam Rishon before he of the Eitz Hadas, what was his dimension of being? It says he stood on the earth and his head went till heaven. That was his height. After he ate of the Eitz Hadas, which is Ra, which is Tova Ra, Soma Koshboch Kapavolo, Hashem, how Kaviyot put his palm on top of him, and he was minimized to 100 amos. He's 100 amos. So what is the consequence of Ra, of sin? The minimization took him to 100. So 100 is the consequence of sin, 100 amos. That's what it represents. What is the purpose? What is the Beis Hamikdash? The Beis Hamikdash is the location of what? Of kapara, of atonement. So to be able to atone for the Ra, which brought about a minimization, which is represented by 100, what do you have to have? You have a counter representation, which represents atonement, and therefore it's also 100 amma. So it's 100 amma of kapara to address the 100 amma of deficiency. This is the bala. This is the Kli Yakar. So it's 100 versus 100. So 100. So why did Yaakov pay 100 ksita for that piece of property? Because right afterwards, what did he do at that location? Vayivin Mizbeach L'Hashem. He built a Mizbeach there. That since he built the Mizbeach, and the purpose of Mizbeach is kapara, therefore he first established the location as 100. This is the location which represents the counterforce to the 100, which is Chet. Therefore, the Torah tells us before he built the Mizbeach, he established it as location representing the 100, which is the counterforce to the negative. That's the Kli Yakar. Okay? So we see the number 100 is the counter the number which represents, which means whatever Ra brings about in the positive context, it actually counters it and creates something which allows you to have relevance to good. So now we're saying, why is it 100 brachos? Why not 115 brachos? Why is the number 100? And the Torah alludes to it. It's alluded, what is Hashem asking of you? He wants you to say 100 brachos every day. Because if you say 100 brachos, and you say Hashem Elokeinu Melech Olam 100 times a day, that will create a cognizance, and that cognizance will allow you to be able to deal with all the challenges to counter the basis why you have a challenge, which is only because of the Ra of the Eitz Hadas, how Odom was minimized because of that. Okay? Now, we mentioned on Chuma that Yaakov's name, there's a question, who named Yaakov? Did his parents name him, or a Malach named him? Hashem named him. Hashem named Yaakov. So the Medrash says, what is Yaakov? The letters of Yaakov, it's an acronym. What does it stand for? Yaakov is Yud, Ayin, Kuf, Beis. So the Medrash Tanchuma says, Yud is Aseret Dibros. Ayin is Ayin Zakenim, the 70 Zakenim, 70 elders. Kuf, Mea Amos Shel Hechel. The Kuf represents the 100 Amos of the Hechel. Beis is Shnei Buchos HaBris, the 2 tablets of the Aseret Dibros. Yaakov himself is the Bechir Shebavos. He's the most special of the patriarchs. He was an embodiment of Klal Yisrael. He fathered the 12 sons. So his essence, what does he represent? He's the counterforce to Ra. Who's Ra in existence? That's Esav. Esav is the representation of evil, and ultimately Amalek is the son of the child of Esav, which is the most extreme level of Ra. And Yaakov, and this is Hakol Kol Yaakov, Yadayim Yadei Esav. When the Kol is the Kol Yaakov, Torah and Tefillah is the counterforce to Esav. That's it. So the Kuf of Yaakov is what? Is Mei Amo, which corresponds to the Gova Hechel, the height of the Hechel. Okay? The Perek in Tilim, which is Mizmor Soda. What number is that Perek? When do you bring the Toda? When you acknowledge, and I once said, the only two meal offerings which are chametz. The 40 loaves of bread that you bring when you bring the Toda, 10 of the 40 are chametz. That's what it is. And also the shtei alechem that you bring on shuas. It's the only meal offerings that are chametz. So we asked, we've explained it. Why is it chametz? Every meal offering is matzah, but this 10 of the 40 is chametz. Why? So the Siforno explains, the Gemara says in Brachos, there are 4 people who have to give thanks to Hashem, to acknowledge that you're beneficiary of Hashem's kindness. What are they? Holchei Yamim, Holchei Midboros, if you travel the seas, high seas, you travel the desert, you're in a state of danger, and you come out alive. Yotzim Beis Asurim, you come out of prison, you give thanks. You recover from an illness, you give thanks. So the Siforno says, what do you have to give thanks? If you never lent me money, do I have to thank you because in your mind you want to give me money? You never did me a favor. Meaning, because every person has a level of culpability because nobody's record is perfect. And because of that level of imperfection on the record, when you're in a state of danger, you should be compromised. So why were you not compromised? So really, what does Chometz represent? The Yetzer Hara. You sinned. We have sinned. We don't have a perfect record. That despite you have sinned, despite the Yetzer Hara that you were affected by him, Hashem saved your life. Therefore, you have to give thanks. That's how the Siforno explains why the Toda offering, 10 of the 40 loaves are what? A Chometz. That's the way Siforno explains it. I explained it slightly different. I said, when do you say thank you? You're saying thank you when you recognize that you're a beneficiary of what? Of Hashem's kindness. That's when you say thank you. So it's not so simple. If you say thank you, that means you're acknowledging that you're a debtor. Person prefers not to be a debtor. Acknowledge you're a debtor, because when you acknowledge you're a debtor, then you have a debt to pay. You owe Hashem. So we always have blind spots to minimize that level of sense of appreciation of indebtedness to Hashem. Who blurs that? That's the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara. Everybody has their own, what we call their own spin on something. Why did he do it? He had his own self-interest. It wasn't for me. Therefore, I don't have to be that appreciative to him. So therefore, the total offering is that despite this, you could see it many other ways. Not to see it as you should see it, that you're a beneficiary, despite that. And why would you see it right? Because of the Yetzer Hara, because of the Chometz. Despite that, you saw it correctly. And you're bringing the total offering. Therefore, that's why the 10 of the 40 loaves are Chometz. What perek is Mizul L'Soda? Perek 100. The 100th perek in Tilim is what is Mizul L'Soda. Again, the 100. The 100 means, despite the fact is that we're minimized as a result of the Chet of Adoration to 100, that was the level of minimization. Despite that, I give thanks to Hashem. I acknowledge that that it's everything is determined. Hashem wills it to be. Therefore, it's 100. Now, the Gemara tells us in Moed Katan, it quotes a pasuk that it says there's a tzaddik and there's not a tzaddik. Who's not a tzaddik? A person who studies Shas 100 times. Tzaddik is a person who studies it 101 times. You go beyond the 100. That Eino dom Talmud Talmud. You cannot compare a person who studies the Talmud 100 times to a person who studies 101. What's 101? 101 means you surpassed 100. So the way they explain it normally is because 100, everybody sets a goal for himself. 100 is the number. When you go beyond the 100, that means you're going beyond the norm. You go beyond the norm. When you go beyond the norm, that is the tzaddik. He went beyond. He broke through that force. That's why he's a tzaddik, the one who studies Shas 101. 100, you're not there yet, because every moment you're always in the position, you're countering the evil. Once you have the upper hand, it's no longer counting, you've suppressed it. That's why Eino Domer, and that's why Barasi Yotzer Barasi Torah Tavlin. I've created the evil inclination. The antidote is the Torah. So when it's 100, you study 100 times, you're going toe to toe. You go 101, that means you're overpowering it. You've gone beyond the 100. That's the way we explained this in the past. Okay. Now, I see something from the Vilna Gaon last night. I'm going through the Sefer. I never looked at this particular piece. And he says, every day we say the Shema. The first Mishnah in Brachos, it says, Me'emasai koren Shema ba'arvis. When do we read Shema at nighttime? Mishnichnusu ha'kohanim lechol b'tru mason. It's the first Mishnah in Shas, in Brachos. When the Kohanim enter to eat Truma Son, which is what the Gemara explains, it says if a Kohen is Tomei, his Kedam goes to the mikvah, he still has to wait till nightfall before he's permitted to eat Truma. Because the category is called Tulio. Because he went to the mikvah today, he has to wait till the next day, only at nighttime. So we're saying that so when do you say Kriya Shema? At night, at nightfall. You don't have to wait till the next morning, like there are other laws, like Kitit Kochim. A person has to wait till the next day for certain levels of contamination. For Truma, you're permitted to eat it that night. Okay? So he asks a question, the Vilna Gaon. It says, it should say, what's Truma son? Then nun seems to be superfluous. What's nun? So the Vilna Gaon explains it this way. We say Kriya Shema twice a day, at night and during the day. Now, the word Truma son is what? Trey Mayo, Truma. 2 times 50 is 100. I'll explain it in a minute. We say Krishma starts Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, then we say Baruch Shem Kol Ma'aseh Lo. How many letters are there in Shema Yisrael through Echad and through Baruch Shem Kol Ma'aseh Lo? You know how many letters there are? There are 49 letters. Shema Yisrael Hashem Echad has 25 letters. Baruch Shem Kol Ma'aseh has 24 letters. That's 49. Twice a day is 98. Now, so that's 98 when you say that. And what is Kriya Shema? Mesiras Nefesh. You're willing to dedicate your life to Hashem. That brings it to 100. That's 50. The 50th, what the words are 49, and what you're doing is you're Moshe Nefesh. You're willing to give your life for Hashem to demonstrate your level of subjugation, of commitment to Him. So that's true Mason. Trey Mayo, that's the Nun. The Nun, when you say Krishma, you create the Nun, it's 50. By understanding what you're doing, you have 50. So it's 2 times 50 is 100. Okay? That's what you're doing. So by saying Krishma twice a day, it's 100. Okay? So when I read this last night, right away, it's 100. When you say Krishma twice a day, what are you creating? What does 100 represent? 100 is the counterforce to what? To whatever the consequence of what? Of the Eitzadas was. Adam initially, he was in the Gan Eden when he was created. He had a sense of Hashem's presence continuously. He was put there in Avdul B'Shamra to work the Gan Eden, to serve Hashem. Somehow he failed. He created this very serious handicap. This level of, almost literally, he became totally dulled. And now it's an uphill battle. It's pushing, it's moving mountains. That's what life's all about. And we've been dealing with this since then till today. We're still dealing with it. So that's 100. So Kriya Shema twice a day, the first 2 psukim, including understanding what it is 100. So how do we, the 100 counters, again, what we're speaking about. But he says something interesting. The Malach, he brings a Zohar that the Malach every night takes the Nishmos Yisrael, the Nishmos HaTzadikim, whatever it means, and brings him to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Michael is the Malach of Klal Yisrael. He's the Malach. Michael. Now, Michael, when Hashem had sent, now, what is the gematria of Michael? The gematria of Michael is 101. You got it? 101. Michael surpasses the 100. He's 101. And when the tzaddikim who are in the world to come, they are that at that level. And what's the tzaddik, as the Gemara says? Tzaddik and Eino tzaddik is 101. The one who studied Shas 101 times. That means he surpassed the 100. That means he has a handle, an upper hand over that. So Michael is that level of representation. Klal Yisrael is 71, right? We're the 71th nation. We go beyond Teva. Teva, nature, we have to contend with all these issues. Once you go 8, you're beyond. Michael is a representation of 101. That's what he is. We find that when Hashem had sent 3 angels to Avram Avinu at the time in human form, who was the one who came to inform Sarah that she's going to have a child? Michael. There were 3 angels. There was Michael, Raphael, and Gabriel. Michael came to inform Sarah she was going to have a child. Raphael came to heal Avram Avinu. It was the 3rd day of his circumcision. And Gabriel came. He was going to come. He wanted to destroy Sodom. Gabriel. He's the Malach Eish. He's the angel of fire. What was Sarah? Sarah was not Korah. She was barren. Humanly, it was impossible for her to have a child. What does Michael represent? Michael represents 101. Within Teva, impossible. Akora, she's barren. Who is the Malach who goes beyond? That's Michael, that's 101. Klal Yisrael is always 101. Based on statistics, we should not exist. We're surrounded with 70 wolves. As I always mentioned from Rav Yaakov Emden, the modern day miracle, Nes Goloi, is that we exist as a people. No nation has ever survived and endured what we've endured, and we're still here. We have a certain resiliency. Why? Because Klal Yisrael is what? Is a spiritual nation. We're not within the context of the 7, we're 8. The Malach of Klal Yisrael is Michoel, that's 101. We surpassed the 100. That's the thing I saw last night about Michoel and Shema twice a day. It's 49, and then you have the additional one that's it's 49. That is 98 plus 2. You have 100. But something else came to mind when I was reading this. We had spoken that the on Yom Tif, on the Regalim, we bring 98 kvosim, 98 sheep on Pesach, 98 kvosim. So Rashi brings from Rav Moshe Darshan in Parshas Pinchos, what's the number 98? Why 98 kvosim? Because in Kisava, when we speak about the Klolos, the 98 curses. The 98 sheep countered the 98 Klolos. And who is 98 kvosim? Klal Yisrael is referred to as the scapegoat, the sheep. We are the sheep. So when you bring the 98 kvosim, that count is the 98 curses. Now, why is a person deserving of a curse? Because we have debt, we have liability. What's the basis for liability? Basis of liability is what? Is the Yetzer Hara. That's the evil of the Eitz Hadas. So the 98 counters the 98 curses. Okay, that's 98. Shema with Bo Shekel Val Shalom Ved. That's 98. Right? 2 times 48, 49 is 98. We take it over the top because of the Mesiras Nefesh. But basically, those two psukim, those two statements is 98. When you say those words, what are you saying? 98. Those 98, that counters the 98 Klolos. Then we take it over the top with Mesiras Nefesh, we've created 100. That's the full thrust of the counterforce against 100. When was Yitzchak born? How old was Avraham? He was 100 years old. 100.
Right.
He was circumcised 90, but he couldn't father Yitzchak until he was circumcised. We mentioned many times the Orla is a representation of the Ra, right? That's a manifestation of the Ra of the Eitz Hadas. He could not father Yitzchak until that was removed from his body. Yitzchak was fathered, but when did that was it actualized? How old was Avraham? He was 100 years old. What's 100? Now we have the Av. We have Yitzchak, who's the Ola Tamima. He's the perfect, unblemished offering. And that's what he was offered as the Korban, because he was the first one to come into existence, which was a full representation of the counterforce of what? Of the Eitz Hadas. This is Yitzchak. There's a Baal Term also in Bereshis. He says, every one of the others, they had Yaakov, all his children were born by the time he was 100 years old. All 12 Shvatim were born by the time Yaakov was 100. Why? He makes the points that out. Avram was 100. Yaakov, Yudei Shvatim were born by the time he was 100. Again, it's this level of representation. It's the 100 versus the 100. Alei Rosha Pisco. Ascend to the top of the precipice. I mean, it's elevated location for Soyin Necho. And open your eyes, uplift your eyes. Yomov, it's a phone of Teimon of Bizrocha. Urei Beinecho. Should look west, north, south, and east, and see with your eyes. Kilo Sabra Seyarne. You're not crossing the Jordan. What's this all about? So Rashi says, Urei Beinecho. Bikashti Mimeni, the Eretz Haaretz Hatova. I want to see the good land. That was the request. Initially, I want to see the good land. Ani Maraloch is Kulam, even though it's impossible. I mean, you're in one location. How could you see every aspect? He saw every part of Eretz Yisrael, and according to the measures, not only did he see the terrestrial, the top, the surface, he saw the subterranean. Everything that had relevance to Eretz Yisrael, Hashem allowed him to see with his eye. Shenemar, v'yarei Hashem is kol haaretz, as it says, Hashem showed him the whole land. And that's what you asked. What did Moshe Rabbeinu want to see the land? So the Mepharshim explained, nobody had an Ayan Tova the way Moshe Rabbeinu had. He had, his eye was so positive when it came to Klal Yisrael, especially. We are the representation of what? Of the whole purpose of existence. We represent Hashem's existence. Moshe Rabbeinu was Eved Hashem. He was dedicated, negated to Hashem. There was no one who ever was more faithful to Hashem than Moshe Rabbeinu. So if we are that level of representation, how positive his eye is, his Ayin Tova. It's one of a kind Ayin Tova. He wanted to see every aspect of that land. The Gemara says in Ksubis, Hador b'chutz l'skein lo Eloika. If you live outside Eretz Yisrael, it's like you have no God. What is the location for serving Hashem? It's Eretz HaKadosha. That's Eretz Yisrael. That's the ultimate location for us to serve Hashem. The Beis HaMikdash was what? Its permanent location is Yerushalayim. That's Yerushalayim Yer HaKodesh. That's the holy city. That's the location of the Shekhinah. So since that location is the location where we're supposed to represent and develop and advance to a level of shleimus, at what level does that location have to have the capacity to bring that about? It has to be spiritualized. Whatever level of negativity is there, has to be something, has to be put at bay. Moshe Rabbeinu's eye was so positive. He had such an Ayin Tova. He wanted to see every aspect of that land, so Klal should be able to function at the maximum level. So Hashem says to him, you said you wanted to see the land, I'll let you see it. But humanly, it's impossible to see. There's always obstructions. Hashem allowed him to see it was a miracle, see every part of the land. That was your request. Because his request was Ayin Tova. When we speak about Ayin Ra, who was the counterforce to Moshe Rabbeinu? That was Bilam. Right? Bilam was the counterforce. There was no prophet greater than Moshe Rabbeinu, be Yisrael. So Chazal tells be Yisrael, but Bein Umas Ha'olam, among the Gentiles, the nation of the world, there was Bilam. Bilam was a representation of evil. He was the counterforce to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was Ayin Tova on the ultimate level. We speak of the evil eye on the ultimate level. Who was that? That was Bilam HaRasha. So again, it's Moshe Rabbeinu versus Bilam. It's again the counterforce, one versus the other. Bilam wanted to destroy us through his Ayin Ra, through his evil eye. Moshe Rabbeinu wants to advance us to our maximum level with his Ayin Tova. And that's what Hashem is saying. You wanted to see the land. I'm allowing you to see the land, and that will be a manifestation of your Ayin Tova to give Klal Yisrael the best chance of succeeding to their ultimate level.